Okay, so this is a bit of a walkthrough on how to do well in section A of the English Language GCSE paper. I'm going to give you some really clear guidance on the timings for each question. In the exam, you must stick to those timings, and if you run out, you must move on, or you're going to risk losing marks. This is how you should approach the questions in a real exam. So, the paper itself is 1 hour and 45 minutes long. You're going to spend 1 hour on part A, which is of nice and men, and 45 minutes on part B, which is writing. In the first 5 minutes, I need to find my questions and underline and highlight the key words for each of the reading questions. Read the extract and highlight as many relevant words or short phrases as possible that will help me to answer part A. The only thing I will be writing in those first 5 minutes is a plan. So, what I would do is spend 5 minutes doing this now. So the question which we're looking at is question 5, answer all parts of the following question. Part A, explore how the language in the extract influences your view of Lenny. You must include examples of language features in your response, and that's 16 marks. And part B, in this extract we learn about Lenny's character. Explore how Lenny is presented in one of the parts of His Mice and Men. You must use examples of the language the writer uses to support your ideas. That's worth 24 marks. So, question 5A asks me to infer and deduce information, to use quotes to back up what I say, and where possible to use language terminology such as imperative verb to show that I understand how language works. I also need to try and be perceptive, so to look deeper than just the surface level or obvious interpretation. In this case, I'm having to write about how Steinbeck uses language to influence my view of Lenny in the extract from section 3 on the exam paper that you can see on the screen now. In total, the question is worth 16 marks. I'm going to give myself 20 minutes to complete this, and I should be able to get a band 5. I only need to read this extract for the answer. I need to have a really clear focus on language, zooming in on single words that Steinbeck has used, and explaining how that affects the reader's opinion of Lenny. Where possible when I'm writing, I should try to group similar techniques together or similar effects. During my reading time, I'd already picked out lots of quotes that I could use to help me to answer this question. I'm showing you those on the screen now. You can see there I've picked out maybe 8 or 9 things that I would be able to say. What I do now is to decide which ones are the most useful to me, and where possible the less obvious ones. And then in my answer book I'll be writing question 5A in the margin, just so that the examiner knows which question I'm doing. So I've sat for 5 minutes, I've thought about what I want to write, I've got my extract, I know about language, so I'm going to start my writing. And what I'm going to do is remember the key words. The extract, Lenny, and language are really important to me here. So this is how I'm going to write. I'm going to remember that I've got to write about language. I've got to zoom in on single words. And I've got to also mention the reader. I've got to think about how Lenny is presented to us and what we think about him as a character. Let's start off, I'm going to say it like this. Steinbeck presents Lenny as an impulsive character, shown through George's descriptive dialogue with Slim. He comments that Lenny wants to touch everything he likes, which ominously foreshadows the tragic end of the novella. The verb wants is key here, as it implies that Lenny cannot distinguish between his wants and needs, adding to the reader's impression of Lenny as a childlike character. Wants further connotes a giving in to baser desires, and is sinister here due to its connection with the allegations of rape made by the girl in the red dress. What I'm trying to do here is to show the examiner that I'm thinking perceptively. So rather than doing just point, evidence, explain, what we can see here is that this is my point, that he's an impulsive character. I've tried to say something about language with the descriptive dialogue. I've also tried to say, I'm zooming in on a key phrase, and then I go further and I go on to the key word of wants. And the reason why I've picked up on the verb wants is because I think the verbs are always really useful to write about. And not everybody would pick up on the word wants in their answer. And so what we're trying to do is be that little bit more perceptive. I've tried to give more than one interpretation of wants so that I'm developing what I'm saying as part of my answer. in my answer, I've got to show the examiner that I'm thinking perceptively, and to signpost that to the person that marks it, I can use some of these phrases. I think particularly the reader's prior opinion is challenged by really shows an intelligent point about the effect on the reader. So what I'd like you to do then is to pause this video and to spend 7 minutes having a go at writing your own analysis of how Steinbeck uses language in the extract to influence our view of Lenny. This kind of technique of timed writing is going to be really useful to you as you prepare for your exam in the summer. Okay, so your 20-25 minutes is up, and now it's time to move on to part B. If you did not finish part A, what you'd be wanting to do is to leave a space and then to write question 5B in the margin. Now question 5B tests exactly the same skills as part A, but this time I have to choose my own extract where I have something useful to say about how Lenny is presented. This is why this question is worth 24 marks, and also why I need to spend longer on this question than I did on question 5A. What I'm ideally looking for is an extract that presents him in a different way than what I've already just written about in part A. I'll spend 5 minutes thinking about and searching for the right extract. This should be no longer than the extract printed in the paper, and no longer than 2 pages. I would definitely not talk about Lenny in general in the novella, or refer to the same extract. Okay, once I've chosen my extract, I will plan my answer, generating 4 key ideas about how language is used to present Lenny. I know that I need to write about language, so keywords and techniques used. So the quotes that I choose will have something to say in terms of that. So for this question, there are a few extracts I think could be used. Those are in section 1, where we have George and Lenny by the Salinas River. I think section 3, which is the fight between Curly and Lenny. Section 4, Lenny talking to cooks in the barn. And section 5, Lenny's murder of Curly's wife. Now I think that I can make the most original and perceptive points about section 5, so that is where I'm going to turn to now. So for this question I'll need 3 to 4 points about how Lenny is presented. Now my first point will explore the idea that Lenny is fearful of George. Okay? I need to find 1 or 2 quotes which back up this point. In my copy of the book in the exam, I'll use a pencil to underline the quotes that I want to use. I'll number them as 1 as they go with my first point. The second point will explore Lenny's aggression and his seemingly uncontrollable strength. Like before, I will use my pencil to underline the quotes that I want to use and number them too. I'm not going to choose the quote Lenny grew angry, as there is nothing for me to infer. It's important that we don't confuse using synonyms for inference, because it isn't going to get you many marks. My third point is going to be looking for a contrast, so that I can show that I can think of Lenny as a 3D character. And I'm going to explore here how Lenny is a sensitive character. Again, I need to find 2 quotes to exemplify this from the extract, and I'd use my pencil again to underline the quotes and number them as 3. So here you can see I've looked at the extract, I picked out the ones I'm going to use for number 1, that Lenny is afraid of George, and then I've added there number 2, points about Lenny's aggression, and then you can see number 3's the points about Lenny being sensitive. So I've got all of the details that I want to use there. While I'm doing that, what I'm thinking about is the techniques that Steinbeck uses, so that I can say something intelligent about language. Before I start writing my essay, I've got to remember to introduce the section that I'm referring to. So I'm going to start my essay like this. This is all that the examiner needs to know as they've read the book. I don't need to give them page numbers. I don't need to give a quote that it starts with and a quote that it ends with. I'm just going to say that it's the murder that I'm focusing on. Then I move on to introducing my first points. I've got to ensure that I refer to the key question words in my response. And the key question words here are Lenny, presented, and language. So we're going to see those pop up at various points. So interestingly, the reader sees a different side of Lenny in this section of the novella. I haven't yet made my point. My point is coming now. For the first time, Steinbeck presents Lenny as fearful of George, showing him his reaction to Curly's wife's screams. He begged George would be mad. Now I'm moving on to my language analysis. The verb begged is significant because it conveys Lenny's fear of being reprimanded and potentially losing his dream, as George ain't gonna let him tend no rabbits. It is this fear which ultimately causes him to hang on to Curly's wife, leading to her death. And I'm going in and zooming in even more detail on those words and trying to show this perceptive and sophisticated analysis. The verb begged and the lexis please are repeated, showing Lenny's desperation and panic at being caught doing a bad thing. Another example of repetition lies in Georgia Be Mad, which influences the reader's view, creating a sense of sympathy, as you realise that Lenny has been under George's control up to this point, and that this control hasn't been a kind parent-child relationship, but rather one dominated by fear. What we can see that I've done here is that I've peppered my answer with lots of little embedded quotations. I've got 6 embedded quotations in this one paragraph, okay? And what I'm doing there is I'm showing a really academic writing style. I'm not just saying this quote shows, I'm trying to do it in a more grown-up and intelligent way there. The word lexis that I've used up here, where I've described the word please, just means word, okay? But it does just sound that little bit more intelligent than just saying word. So if you're not sure about the word class, you can say the lexis or the lexical choices, okay? So then I've got to go on to my next point, and to show the examiner that I'm sophisticated and perceptive, what we need for A over A star, I'm going to link it to my previous one, and this is how I link it. I'm going to leave that for you to read there. Now what I recommend you do is that you pause the video again and that you spend another 7 minutes continuing on with this analysis of language. You can always skip back through the video to have a look at the pages which I have chosen, or you can use your own copy of Mice and Men. You can do the same thing on any extract for any character, and that's a really useful thing to do for your revision. That timed writing is particularly important. Okay, so I recommend pause now. Okay, so this section of the video is finished now, and this will be 30 minutes on part B. Obviously, you would spend half an hour writing. We're now halfway through the exam paper, so 55 minutes, haven't we? Tomorrow, well, next video, we'll be moving on to section B, which is the writing section, and it will be question 9 or 10. In the exam, if you spent 55 minutes and you haven't finished yet, you would leave a space and then you would write question 9 or 10 in the margin. Okay, so feel free to use this resource whenever you need to.